Welcome back to the Business Forum Show. I'm Kevin Hunter. In studio with me today is my resident co-host, David Ford. And across the way from me, Annie Deckert from Decklan Group. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for
Kevin.
having me.
Annie, talk a little bit about Decklan Group. I know it's a new organization that you've recently formed. So talk about the organization and really what you do.
Okay, well, it's kind of two components, economic development consulting and social media management. So prior to starting this, I have a background in government economic development. So that's basically helping businesses, whether they're expanding, relocating, looking for financing, looking for a new site, that type of thing, doing that type of thing. More specifically, now starting my new business is while working in government, I often saw a gap between businesses that were wanting to expand or build and government processes. So oftentimes when you're looking at it, especially from like a manufacturer's point of view, you know, you'll build a new building or do an expansion once in your life. And if you're wanting to apply for a tax abatement or some type of incentive or grant from the state or something like that, it can be a very cumbersome process. And obviously you have knowledgeable city staff to help you through that process, but they're doing a lot of other things as well, so they can't necessarily hold your hand. So part of the reason why I started this business was that I saw that there was such a need for someone to help these businesses go through this process, because a lot of times business owners are so busy running their own business that they don't have time to kind of navigate those processes, so they'll elect to not go through with the expansion or something like that just because they don't have the time to, you know, fill out the paperwork and go to the public meetings and that type of thing.
We've had a fair amount of conversation about the reasons why some business people don't follow through or don't do the things that they really need to in terms of accessing the resources within their community. But there is kind of a scary side of this as well for business people in that, you know, they're afraid that they're going to be made to look stupid, or, you know, it's not unusual for businesses to bring, you know, whatever their requests or desires are before their city councils and be turned down. And sometimes the reasons for that aren't real well understood. Now, how do you help a business in that situation?
Well, if they're looking to do something, oftentimes, the first thing they do is they'll call the city and say, hey, I want to, build this sign, or I want to open a business in my home in a residential neighborhood. And a lot of times, they'll talk to staff and say, nope, it's against, city ordinance. You can't do that. Well, oftentimes people just give up and say, no, you can't do that. But what people don't realize is there's different processes you can go through to actually, amend the ordinance or change the ordinance so it's permitted. And like we were discussing before, oftentimes, like I said prior, city staff sometimes are just so busy doing the day-to-day things and being reactive that they can't necessarily find the time to be proactive to change ordinances so that they're more, relevant as to what's happening going on today. So if someone wants to change an ordinance, there's a very good opportunity they could do that. They just have to go through the process. And so it can be very tricky, but there's an application process to go through. And as long as the person can, explain why they want to do this and kind of give, solid rebuttals to the city's reasons why they won't work, there's a really good chance it can be approved.
And a lot of times the language that what the city will rely on in terms of the reasons why they're turning things down, sometimes it just really boils down to the business really understanding what's involved, what's being said there, what they're looking for, and then explaining their request in the language that can be understood in terms of whether it's the ordinance or whatever it is. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's a very fair statement. I think a lot of times you can call it government speak, but a lot of the things that are talked about seem, they're hard to understand and overwhelming, but a lot of times there's a very easy way to explain them. And I think sometimes that, when you work for a municipality, you work with it on a day-to-day basis, so it makes sense to you, but you're not necessarily understanding that the person you're explaining it to, this may be the first time they've ever heard of it, and you get so caught up in your day-to-day work that you look and say, hey, this is against ordinance, nope, I'll recommend denial, but maybe you don't take the time to really understand where's this business owner coming from, and maybe it's an outdated ordinance that we just need to change for the benefit of all businesses.
Mm-hmm. Dave,
it's largely what we're talking about here is where your expertise is, where your comfort zones are, what you're really good at. If you're looking at, if you have an issue, a legal issue, you're not going to try to fight the battle yourself. You're not going to try to, because you don't understand the law. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to do your taxes, hopefully, if you're a business, you shouldn't be doing the taxes yourself. You should be having a CPA do it because they understand all of the tax rules. That's their comfort zone. That's what they're good at. Mm-hmm. And, if you have an issue, if you're trying to get signs, if you're trying to change something with your business that is going to require any political help, or that you're going to require you to go stand in front of the city council and try to get them to waive a passed law or make an adjustment based on what you're looking for. You don't necessarily know the speak. You don't know all the terms. You don't know where to find all the information out. You can try, but it tends to be too scary for people to do something that's that far out of their comfort zone. Now, Annie, you can hear by the way she's talking, this is obviously really in her comfort zone. She really feels comfortable standing up in front of the city council going, well, what about this? And well, what about this? Well, they've done it over here. It's like she's got her own legal degree or her own political degree to stand in front of the city council and try to lobby for what is the best interest of your business. So it's a really simple choice in a lot of cases. I can try to do it and probably fail, or I can find out more information or find somebody else that's going to be a lot better at it than I am that can do it for me.
I've been a part of a situation in the past, Annie and I elaborated on this a little bit before the show, but was with a business that was trying to accomplish something with the city, and one of the members of the council actually opened the meeting by saying, we're here to say no to your request, and now you need to give us a reason why we should even consider this or say yes. And obviously there's been better experiences than that as well, but sometimes there's this idea that businesses have, and the reason they don't pursue things with their local cities and whatnot is that that's their expectation. I'm simply going to be turned down. I'm simply going to be said no to. And you're really helping because of your inside information that you've learned over the last, how many years did you work in city government?
9, 10 about.
Okay. And so based on your understanding of what they need to do, you're really being their mouthpiece and kind of helping put whatever the request is in language that the city can understand and say yes to, even though they might be there, in this case, to say no.
Correct, because I think a lot of times when people try to do this themselves, you get so caught up in kind of the red tape and some of the terms, and then on top of that, you're nervous just to go to a public meeting anyways, because it's scary going in front of a group of 5, 7, 9, depending on how many people are on the council. It's scary going in front of them, and a lot of people obviously fear public speaking, and I think that people get so caught up in the process and being nervous about that they forget the whole point of why they're there and what they're trying to do. And I think in the situation that you were talking about, when the person opened up the meeting saying we're here to say no, well, I would strongly suggest the business owner say, well, why? Explain that to me. I mean, I respect that you say no, that you don't want to allow me to do this, but can you just explain why not? And see what they say, because I think a lot of times the city staff and maybe the elected officials, it's just you get so caught up in this is how we always did it. Well, the economy is different now, and that doesn't always work. And maybe it still works moving forward, but can we talk about it? Explain to me why you still say no to that, because these are the reasons why I think it's a good idea. In addition to that, to make your case stronger, depending on how much your opposition is, there's so much strength in numbers, and like we were talking about before, people don't like to come to public meetings and say anything because they think they can't make a difference. Well, they can. Go to any public meeting. Not often is even anyone in attendance in the audience. And when you think about it, you have these, 5, 7, 9 people up there, and if people aren't pushing back on them, or not even pushing back, but just giving their opinion, why would they change the way they're thinking? Get a crowd of people, fill up the city council room, get a petition, get letters of support from other well-respected organizations, the community saying, no, I really support this. You should really allow them to do this. And if you're not, can you just explain why? So then we understand, and we don't waste your time in the future trying to fight the same thing. Just explain to us why you're saying no.
I think what I'm hearing you say really is that sometimes the city has to be shown, or people in government have to be shown, really what the intention of an ordinance was. What's the spirit of it? And an example that I can think of is, let's say the parents leave home in the evening and they tell their kids, don't go outside, keep the doors locked and don't go outside. Well, that's the so-called letter of the rule they have laid when they left. But what if the house starts on fire while the parents are gone? Do they still want the kids to stay in the house? No, the spirit was that they wanted the doors locked and then them to stay inside for their safety. And now that it's safer outside than inside, well, you go outside. So I think sometimes people just have to be, you have to look at why was an ordinance written, why was a rule written, and what was the spirit of it, rather than what are the exact letters that it spells out. And does this really even make sense in terms of what somebody's trying to accomplish?
Right. So a lot of times when that ordinance was put into place or approved, that the circumstances could be much different than the way they are today. You could have, written an ordinance in such a way that at this point in time, the city was very small and didn't want to grow, so we didn't want to allow, high density residential or that type of thing. Well, since then, there's been urban sprawl and we have a high population and there's a train station here now, and when we want to bring in businesses and we have all these new families coming in, we want to increase our tax base. So hey, maybe we should allow those apartment buildings to be built or that type of thing. But again, communities don't look at the ordinances until either someone challenges them or they actually have the time to be proactive and change them to be relevant.
I'm Kevin Hunter here on the Business Forum Show. We're chatting with Annie Deckert from Decklan Group. If you'd like to reach her organization, you can find them on the web at decklangroup.com. And that's Decklan, Decklan, group.com. And the office number is 612-564-0795. Again, 612-564-0795. We'll be back with Annie Deckert here on the Business Forum Show in just a moment. I'm Kevin Hunter. Don't go away.